Hey there. I'm excited to announce this to you today. This is what you've been waiting for in your spiritual quest. This is something I've wanted to do for a long time, and I'm finally ready to announce it that it's ready to go. It's the Grief to Growth Community Circle. Now, this is a sanctuary where like-minded souls are united in their journey through grief and towards personal transformation. It's more than just a place. It's a beginning. It's a commitment to growth and understanding. Here you're finding not just a community, but you're entering a circle of trust and depth. You're going to engage with interactive coursework. You'll dive into exclusive podcast episodes and partake in discussions that illuminate the path from mourning to empowerment. This is a realm where every question is honored and every individual's journey is validated. To be part of this exclusive circle, visit us at grieftogrowth.com/community or look for the chat icon at the bottom of every page on the main website. Remember, the entry is a privilege because I want to ensure that every member is as dedicated and genuine as you are. You must apply to join, but the journey within is worth every step. So go ahead and join us today. Check it out, grieftogrowth.com/community, and I look forward to seeing you there. Hey, everybody, this is Brian back with another episode of Grief to Growth. I've got a very special guest with me today. Her name is Venia Hill. She was born and raised in Philadelphia. She's an Air Force veteran. She's traveled and resided in several countries, and she had a profound NDE in her late teens while she was visiting Italy. And she's going to tell us about that. And then she had a visit through the void years later. She's had several extraordinary experiences in her life, and they all combine to solidify the message that she's here to share with us today. So she's going to start off by telling us about her experience. But we really want to do is just get to the messages that she's got for all of us, because I think you're going to find them to be fascinating. So with that, I want to introduce everybody to Venia Hill.
Hello.
Or Vena, I'm sorry. Vena,
that's all right.
So Vena, thanks for being here. I've seen some of your other interviews, and I know you've got a really interesting story. So I want to start off with your experience, of course, but we also want to get into the lessons that you learned.
Well, first, thank you for having me. And as I expressed, I think what you're doing is very important work for a lot of people. And I think it helps a lot. I've actually checked your channel out too. So you're doing some very good work. So thank you for that. And yes, I did have I've had several experiences in my lifetime. Some sound unbelievable, and yet I've had people tell me that, as unbelievable as they sound, and as fantastic as they sound, they believed every word of it. And I guess probably because you just can't make it up. Some of the stuff I went through, you really can't make it up. But anyway, I was 17 when I really had my first major experience, and that was the near-death experience, where I literally died. I was on a trip to Italy, and I was on the bus after we got off the airport. I was on the bus, had loaded all our luggage up, and prior to getting on the bus, I had taken some caffeine pills, and I took way too many. And by the time I was getting on the bus, the caffeine was just like I could almost come out of my skin. That's how much it was just going through my system. And of course, back then they were called, I believe, no-dos. And I don't think they put any kind of warnings on what it would do. But I started to feel my heart race, and it raced so much. And to the point where I could hear it in my ears. And I don't know if anyone has ever experienced that, but it's a very scary feeling, because you're literally hearing your heart in your ears. And it was going like boom, 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 boom. And at one point, it reached a peak, and I felt something in my chest. Obviously, my heart. It did something really strange. And then the sound in my ear, my heartbeat started slowing down. And it actually just came to a stop. complete stop. And at that moment, I opened my mouth to scream, but I had lost complete sensation in my body. Like I was not attached to my body anymore physically on a physiological level.
Mm.
And right at that moment, my spirit just popped and literally popped out of my body. And I was looking at my fleshly self on this bus. And not only myself, but I could just see everything around me. And I didn't even know I had died at that point. That's the funny thing, Brian. It didn't really occur to me that I was dead. I just knew something had happened. And that's where things just really got really interesting. And the start of the near-death experience.
Well, I'm sure at 17, you probably had, I would guess you had no concept of like, I could die.
No,
and you probably hadn't
not.
heard much about it or anything, but in near-death experiences at that point. So being outside of your body, I'm sure had to be disorienting.
Oh, it was disorienting, but you feel so, first of all, when I first popped out of my body, I did eventually take like what you would call a spiritual form, but immediately after I was pure consciousness. There was no breakdown in a barrier there on the bus. So you feel so alive. Death doesn't even occur to you because you're so alive and you're so hyper aware of everything. There's an awareness that, you know, I joked with someone one time. I said, if I could have this same awareness at the casino, I'd be like a millionaire because you could just see everything, like through everything, you know. And I remember one of the very first things that I became conscious of when I did pop out of my body was everything is energy. Everything has energy. Everything on that bus had energy. And not just the bus, but I was conscious of things outside of the bus, the cars. There were mountains there. Italy is a very mountainous country. I don't know if a lot of people are aware of that, but we were passing by some. They were emitting energy. The people on the bus, they had different energy fields around them, which I know now is the auric field. Back then, I had no clue what an aura was, none whatsoever. So I'm seeing these beautiful. Some of them were beautiful, some of them not. But these streams of energy around people, and I had like I didn't know what it was. But yeah, so at 17, there's so much you're not aware of. You're feeling great. You don't think you can die. But I was very dead. And it's funny you say that because looking at my body on the bus, like I said, everyone else's auric field was so expressive or colorful and I mean, they weren't all the same, you know, they were different, but my body hardly had any energy coming from it. It was so little. And I remember not doing like a double take, but I twice looked at people, their lights, and then I looked at my body and it's like, there's like nothing, there's none of that coming from it hardly, you know? So, and by the way, we look totally different outside of our bodies than we do like when we're looking in a mirror. Our bodies are not the same because you're seeing things, the whole, I guess in a mirror, it's what, 1 or 2 dimensions?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you're looking at yourself from outside of yourself, you're seeing the whole slab of, which is what it is, meat.
Yeah.
For lack of a better word.
Yeah. So was there, I've heard some people have NDEs say, well, there was like really no attachment to my body. How did you feel about your body at that point?
There was no attachment, but I just felt like I knew it was me. But you're so alive, Brian, and you're so in that consciousness that it's like looking at this laptop right now, almost. The attachment you feel towards it, it's like, okay, subjectively, yeah, I know this is like my body, but I don't feel attached to it in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a moment, though, I did have like some type of compassion for myself when I was looking down at myself, because things were running through my mind about the Vena that was laying there and the life that she had lived up to that point. And so there was a very detached compassion towards me. Okay. But along with that, you have like an understanding and awareness more of she was just going through the motions of life. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nothing really affected her truly. She was just going through the emotions of life. But I did have a sense of compassion for me.
Yeah. Interesting.
Even though I was very detached from me.
From the body.
I hope I'm making sense.
Yeah, well, I think so. But, it's interesting because a lot of times we identify with our bodies. We'll say, this is me. And I think, for people like myself that have been doing this as long as I have, I will say, this is my body as opposed to this is me. So I think when people come outside their body, it's like, well, no, I'm not dead because this is me, right? You're
Right.
The essence of you is now removed from the body. So the body is just like, I've heard it's like taking off old clothes.
It is. It seriously is. And that's one of the reasons from that point forward, race took on a whole different meaning for me. And especially when we'll talk about this, but when I did go into the actual spiritual realm and made connection with my actual soul, you realize how race is literally nothing. I mean, it is just a cover, and that is it. I mean, that's not to take away from having racial pride or recognizing our species, because we are racial here. Okay. But our true essence, there's no race. There's no race. No gender, none of that. This is literally a covering. And when you see yourself in true spiritual form, you realize you are purely spiritual.
Yeah.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey there, something I want to tell you about today. My podcast platform, Buzzsprout, has recently made it easier for me to allow you to support me financially. Go to www.growth2growth.com/subscribe. That's growth2growth.com/subscribe. And once you're there, you can sign up to support me financially. Now, you can do it for as little as $3 a month, or of course, as much as you'd like. If you do that, you'll get access to bonus episodes, and you'll see those in the regular feed. They'll have a lock on them. But when you become a subscriber, you'll actually get access to your own private feed, and you'll be able to listen to the regular podcast along with the bonus podcast for the subscribers. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for sharing the podcast. And I want to thank those of you who support me financially. Have a great day, and on to the episode. Well, it's
purely.
really interesting you bring that up. I just want to interject this here when you said that, because for me, I resisted the idea of race for the first 20 plus years of my life. I'm like,
Okay.
I'm not a black. I mean, I am black, but like everybody keeps telling me you're black, you have to be black. I'm like, no, I'm human. I'm a person. And, but then eventually you take on that identity when you're here because it's forced on you.
And that's what you are here. And there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. I'm a black woman.
Right.
I'm a black woman here.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say is I have had the privilege of seeing my true form.
Right.
And my true form is spiritual. And it has nothing to do with race, sex, creed, none of that.
Yeah.
And so while we're here, I totally get racial pride. I get all that. I have racial pride.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But like I said, our true spiritual form, we have to understand is none of that.
Yeah.
It involves none of that. As a matter of fact, it never even came up when I was on the other side.
Yeah. So let's talk about your experiences on the other side. So now you're out of your body and you're on the bus. Yeah.
Yes. And I had some more, experiences on the bus. And then eventually this being kind of, I'll say, niggled or touched my consciousness with its consciousness. There was no speaking, but it was like a major thought transference of, we're going to go now. Like it was identified as my guide, and we're out of here. And so we left the bus. It took me out of the bus. We went out of the bus, and we landed in this white realm, which is it wasn't a tunnel, did not go through a tunnel, none of that. We landed right in this white, pure, loving realm, the most reverent place. I just cannot describe it fully, but I will say that imagine a room that is all white, and you're just completely 100% at peace there. Okay. You're infused with so much love, so much divinity. You couldn't and can't think a negative thought. And the energies of this room just permeate through your entire being and even deeper. And imagine that in this room, you just feel like you finally have come home. That's what this realm felt like to me. I'm actually sort of experiencing it again. And
yeah, I can tell.
Yeah. And when I close my eyes, I'm literally like trying to relive it again so that I could explain it and express it in the most clearest way that I can.
Mm-hmm.
But I can tell you, and I'm just right at this moment, I'm getting goosebumps, but I'll just say that this realm was not a necessarily like a place, but it was the atmosphere of the spiritual world that permeates throughout it all. Harmonious, divine, loving, pure love.
Yeah.
And in this realm, And the being that took me there, I knew that they were still there, but I was so at peace and so aware of the spiritual world through this white realm that I knew that the being was there, my guide, that they identified themselves to me as my guide, but they were so not standoffish, but so in the background and just allowing me to experience this wonderful, beautiful realm. And in this realm, I saw many different souls. They were just streaming through. I sensed them, but they weren't intrusive on my piece there or none of that. I just knew that they were there. They were experiencing it, but we just left each other alone because we were just absorbing and experiencing this realm. And I saw so much, but one of the things that I did see was, or did experience, was my soul. So when I first went into the realm, I was just conscious basically of me and this guide. And then I started experiencing other souls in this realm. But then I realized my true highest self, which is the soul. Your soul is your highest being, of the you of you. I'll just put it that way. I realized that the Vena that was in the white realm was not the whole Vena. It was not the ultimate Vena. The ultimate Vena was my soul, which I did make a connection with, but it was so much more than that Vena that just went to Italy and died on a bus. And I'm laughing because I was that Vena was not an insignificant, but such a small part of the overall Vena. The overall Vena had been around forever and had experienced so much and had created so much and was completely in tune with these the higher realms of the spiritual world. And believe it or not, I was not in the highest realm of the spiritual world because there's so many layers over there. It's just so many. But my soul, which I did connect with, I experienced a lot of that through that connection. But that Vena was just one small aspect of the overall soul that we all have. And is our ultimate, the Brian of Brian, which is not even Brian.
So, yeah, I don't want to interrupt, but this might be confusing to some people because we think that I am my soul, that my soul incarnates in my body. You're saying there's something beyond this, and this is just a small part of what we ultimately are.
So the soul never incarnates, ever. People, and I know that when I first told people that, they were like, "What? No, that's not true. I'm here." The soul, the highest aspect of you, me, and all of us, which is the soul, never incarnates. It cannot be confined to this 3D. However, the soul can send spiritual offshoots here and elsewhere, and it does. It sends out. Think of the soul as like the head of an octopus.
Mm.
And the octopus has what, like 8 legs or something, or maybe some more. I don't know.
Yeah.
But those legs are you and me and wherever else the soul wants to experience life. Because there's many more worlds, there's many more existences we can live and experience. This is just one of them. But so your soul, this is not Vena's soul. This is an aspect of Vena's soul.
Yeah.
And now, mind you, we're always connected. You cannot, disconnect that octopus leg from its head or whatever you call it. I don't know.
Right.
But is it a head? I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great analogy. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make it as clear as possible. That is what I saw in the realm. And it forever, it just imprinted on my brain. And once I started processing that throughout my life and understanding, I realized just how powerful our souls are. Our souls are immensely powerful. But this is just one aspect of it. Like the rays of a sun were just one of those rays.
Interesting. Yeah. That's a really interesting concept. And it's something, I've heard it put other ways. Frances Key wrote some books called the Team books. And the way she describes it, she says, when we're incarnated here, I think the analogy she uses is like, she's like, if you're sitting on the bank of a river and your big toe is in the water, she goes, that's what it's like being incarnated as a human, and our soul is the rest of the body.
Yes. We are not, this is not our soul. Trust me. It's not. And if you think about it, the soul is so powerful and it's indestructible. It cannot be diminished. The soul can never be controlled, destroyed, diminished in any way. However, aspects of the soul can be, like in our human form, we can be, or if we decided to incarnate elsewhere, yes. But the soul is very powerful. It is literally a part of the source of all.
Wow. So when you experienced your soul, what was that like? I mean, you described it as being powerful. Was it like coming home? Do you reconnect with your soul? Because I think a lot of us are saying, well, okay, well, then am I going to be absorbed? Am I going to be lost?
Oh gosh, no. Like I said, the soul can never be diminished in any way or form. And there was I still had my complete identity as Vena. But it was a connection made to it, but it wasn't an absorption into it, because I would imagine that if I did completely absorb back into my soul, we wouldn't be talking now.
Right.
Okay. So, but there was a major connection to it. And I got to tell you, there was a reverence in connecting to it. I felt such not that there's no worship on the other side, okay? But I felt such a reverence towards my soul, because the soul, is the highest aspect of any of us. And it contains all the divinity and love and pureness of the other side. And so when you're face to face with your soul, you are face to face with that divinity, that love, that purity. And it's a beautiful and awe-inspiring moment. Not that I wanted to be like this to my, my soul, but it was just a beautiful connect to a major part of me, or the me of me. Like I was allowed to experience the soul, but always I knew that I could not merge with it yet. That's just the best way I can describe it.
Yeah. Well, you're describing concepts that I believe are beyond our human understanding. So we're trying. We're all trying.
And I'm trying desperately.
Yeah.
I really am. I always want. When I decided finally, after all these years, to really come out with this, I said that I was just going to do it and be as forthcoming as I could be with almost everything I experienced, because I would want to know, I would want to know.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I really. Hello?
I'm still here. I'm still
here. Okay.
Yeah.
I really want to bring out as much of it as I can, but unfortunately, I'm a tad bit limited by language.
Yes. Well, and again, language is only evolved to describe what we can comprehend, right? So when you go beyond something we can comprehend, we don't have the language. So you just have to do the best you can, which is what you're doing. For anybody that's wondering, my camera just went off for some reason, but I'm still here. So just go ahead.
Well, and I don't know if you believe in it, but Mercury is retrograde, and that's the kind of stuff that happens with Mercury.
Yeah, it's really weird because it just went off for absolutely no reason. But it's not important that people see me. So so what else happened when you were on the other side?
So I was, oh my goodness, I mean, there was a bunch of knowledge that I collected while I was in the white realm, and then eventually my guide said that we're going to travel. And I had a brief moment. I'll say a questioning moment. Like, was this okay? And that type of thing. But, my soul, since I had made that connection, you're back, by the way.
Yeah.
It said that it just infused me with, it's okay. It's okay. And I got that from an inner guttural, instinctive level. And so I was game to travel. And we went through this. It wasn't a tunnel, but it was like a portal of energy, I'll just say. And we went out into space. And I'll just say this. Before I had that near-death experience, I had astral traveled once. Was laying in bed, and I astral traveled. My body zoomed out into space. And I think I was there for nanoseconds, Brian. And then it was like, oh my God, it was just so overwhelming. And I zoomed right back in. I just couldn't take it. It was too much. But this time I was with this being, my guide. And when we went out there, it was still overwhelming, and it was still massive, and it was still endless and everywhere. And when I say everywhere, I mean front, back, side, everywhere, up, down. I mean, but I just felt not protected, because there wasn't like a threat, but I felt energy of them just kind of like comfort and calm me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was able to see so much out there. And I got to tell you, there's some stuff going on out there that a lot of it we don't even see through our telescopes, probably never will. Some of it we do see and we've been lied to. There's so many planets out there that they're not telling us about. There's so much space traffic out there. A lot of space traffic. I actually saw souls traveling in orb type forms. And by the way, my guide was always an orb, always presented itself as an orb to me, never as a humanoid type figure, never as even a spiritual figure. It stayed an orb the entire time. I couldn't tell you if they were male or female. That was deliberately kept from me. And I was never given their name. And I understand now why. They did tell me kind of partly during the experience, that spiritual names are very powerful, and they contain a lot of energy behind them. And so that is why we're not usually given spiritual names. Like you and I have spiritual names on the other side, but we're rarely given them here because of the power that they contain. And it's symbolic, and it's energy, and it's a lot in that one name.
Yeah.
And it fits us perfectly. But anyway, and sorry for rambling off like that. But so there were orbs that were traveling out in space that I saw. And some of them I knew were humans, and some weren't. Some were other type species that were in orb form traveling. And some were like very determined to get to their destination, and some were just kind of hanging out, sort of like we were. Because I was in an orb form at that point too. And I got to tell you, space is literally mind-blowing. I don't know if you've ever meditated and went out into space.
I've never been out of my body that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right. Well, it's mind-blowing. It really is. And there's so many dimensions out there.
I was just going to ask you to interrupt you for a moment, because there is the space that we know of in our 3 dimensions, but there's also dimensions beyond this. So do you think you were seeing other dimensions, or were these things actually in our dimension as well?
Absolutely. Somewhere in our dimension for sure. I did see quite a few ships traveling, and I knew that they were 3-dimensional, but I also saw some in other dimensions. There's a lot of dimensional traffic. And I described in the book that there's more traffic out in space than like on an Atlanta highway. Wow. Except it's you've got alien species traveling, you've got souls traveling, and some of the aliens are 3-dimensional, but a lot of them aren't. There's a lot of interdimensional travel going on out there.
Well, and it's interesting you bring up what our government, you said they're lying to us, and typically I would go to government. There is some disclosure now of some admission of UFOs or aliens that we've been in contact with, even though we've known for decades that we've known from anecdotal stories, but the government's starting to finally admit it.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi there, I'm really excited to tell you about my latest ebook. It's 4 lessons that you can learn from the near-death experience without going through all the trouble of dying to learn them. I've been studying NDEs for several years now. I am completely convinced that not only are they 100% real, but that there's some very universal wisdom that we can get from the near-death experience. And I've distilled that down in this book into 4 short lessons. And I've also given you all the reasons why I believe that NDEs are absolutely real. So go to www.grieftogrowth.com/NDE lessons to pick it up for free. www.growth.com/NDE lessons. I hope you enjoy it.
Yes. And I have a YouTube channel and I answer questions and answers. And one of the questions was, someone asked, does the government, are they deliberately covering up, the alien existence, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Absolutely. And they have been forever. But people will be surprised, I think, to know that a lot of that is due to the aliens' request. In other words, if you think about it, if today we woke up and they said, yes, aliens definitely exist, they're here on Earth, and here they are, I think our entire society would probably collapse. I think for some, it would just be too much mentally for some. Some would have breakdowns. Others would be happy. But I think it's more for our protection. And a lot of it is because of the aliens want to remain incognito. Yes, the government covers up. Absolutely. 100%. But it's not all because they're doing it just to keep it from us. It would have a devastating effect on a lot of the population of the world. And this I saw that.
Mm-hmm.
Because, when I was coming up, and especially when I had this experience, they completely were denying the existence of aliens.
Right.
And so for me to actually see them, and, at one point I saw this humongous sphere out in space. That was 3-dimensional, by the way. And it was not, it was maybe the size of Earth, but a little bit smaller. Okay. And I was told by my guide that it could not show me this particular species of beings because it would just be too much for me to handle. Now, mind you, at another point, we went to another portion or section of space. And I was actually told kind of where it was, but not like in longitude and latitude, because I don't have a scientific type mind. And I know my guide knew that, and I still don't. But the beings that I saw, Brian, I got to tell you, they were, if you saw them now, you would probably just, I don't know, pass out. They just had 2 vertical slits, no nose, no mouth, just vertical slits. And the slits opened this way. They did have ears, and they were like a crystalline, a biocrystalline type of entity. And so was their ship. Their ship was just about the same type of material as their body. And at 17, it was, you just can't make any parallels. So mind you, I came from the government saying there's no aliens, we're it, that's it, to seeing this species. And it was just like, it was too much. I I was so disinterested, it wasn't even funny.
Hmm.
And but my guide let me see just enough of these creatures and their ship and how they did their ship um, to remember, and I guess to talk about it now.
Yeah, well, as you're saying this, I think I wonder how much of this comes through in our fiction, in our movies and stuff. Because you think about movies like Star Wars with the different aliens, and Star Trek. Gene Roddenberry back in the '60s showing all the different species, and most recently James Cameron with Avatar. And I've understood that James Cameron had an NDE. So
I
I
did not know
wonder.
that.
I believe that. I believe that's true. Yeah.
Oh wow.
So
Okay.
our government has told us on the one hand there's nothing else out there, but meanwhile we've got all kinds of imagination, at least, of what is out there.
Yeah. Yes. And a lot of people are, fed that information, when they're either sleeping and they're traveling to the
Right.
other side, and getting these downloads, you
Right.
know.
Right.
Um, and a lot of times our guides, will give us this information if it's time for certain things to get out,
Mm-hmm.
So those Gene Roddenberrys and James Camerons, you said he had a near-death experience,
I believe
and
that's true. Yeah.
maybe he did, yes. But yeah, we're fed that information, or it's just through our travels, because we do a lot of traveling,
Right. Right.
when we're asleep.
Right.
A
So I
lot of
wonder,
travel.
the pictures behind you. Did you paint those, or
Yes, I did.
okay? So those are representations of some of your experiences, I assume.
From the near-death experience. So
Yeah.
this one here, while out in space, I saw one of these. This looks like a nebula, and you think, yeah, that's a nebula, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Except I experienced that out in space, but it was an actual living being
Mm-hmm.
that was very intelligent, and it was moving with purpose out there.
Wow.
Okay. And so I've never been able to look at a nebula the same again. Um, I'm not saying that they're all alive like that, but the one that I experienced was very much alive. There was I was allowed to see an asteroid moving, and on this asteroid was this creature. It was huge, and it looked like a um, sort of like a hippopotamus, but a huge hippopotamus out on this asteroid. And mind you, it wasn't enclosed in anything. There was nothing housing it. It was just on this asteroid. And back then I had no clue what I know you've heard of a tardigrade.
I'm not familiar with that now.
Okay, good. Because I wasn't. So that's good. Back then I wasn't. But they are beings, they're microscopic beings that can withstand nuclear energy. Okay. Um, and they're basically indestructible.
Hmm.
And when I saw this a few years ago, this being through a microscope, because that's how tiny it is, it looked exactly like this huge being I saw on this asteroid.
Hmm.
Okay. And putting two and two together, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is just a bigger, larger version of the tardigrade. And it made sense because, like I said, the tardigrade, you can't even destroy it with nuclear energy. So, what's out in space? Nuclear type of energy, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this being was on this asteroid and it was fine.
Hmm.
So, um, it was just, like I said, a bigger version of the tardigrade. But
Right.
yeah, so um, that was one of the creatures. This this sun, I one of the last places I was taking to during the near-death experience was a water planet, and the planet had a blue sun. Beautiful, beautiful blue sun. And so I tried to capture that here, and it was just a full water planet. There was very little land mass on this planet. And there were creatures on this planet. Marine life creatures, mer creatures. And let me tell you, they don't look like our sweet little mermaid cartoons or in our movies here. They're quite frightening looking, some of them.
Interesting. Wow.
Yes, but yes, both of these, and I've done several more, but yes.
Okay. So, you had this, you did some traveling. Sounds like there's several places, and I want to tell people you're going to have to get the book to really, I think, get a full aspect of this, because it sounds like there's a lot more than we can cover in an hour or so here.
Absolutely.
But how did you eventually come back into your body?
So my guide, after we come from the water world, we went back into the white realm. And I was taught quite a few things, and I was also taken to a lovely, beautiful garden, meadow, whatever you want to call it. But to answer your question, do you mean the physiological, like how I was put back in? Or?
Well, I was there, because it's interesting. I've heard some people say just like suddenly I was back. Some people said there was a conversation. Are you going back? So what was that process like?
It was definitely a process. It wasn't a boom, you're back. No.
Okay.
And sometimes when I've heard people say, yeah, boom, I was just right back in, I'm like, wow, because mine was such a process. And it wasn't instantaneous. You can feel your spiritual aspect trying to fit back into your body. And you're not connected to your body right away. Your body has to reconnect to those sensations of the physical form. So it's like a sucking type motion or process, and it's not instantaneous.
Was there a conversation about what I meant to ask? Was there a conversation about coming back? Was it like, were you given a choice?
No choice. It was basically understood. There was I didn't want to stay. I didn't, as much as I loved it and felt that it was home. But during the near-death experience, I saw why I was here.
Wow. Okay.
And so I understood that I still had more time here.
Okay.
So it wasn't like no, I'm not going back, I'm staying. No. And it was no forcing, none of that. It was understood.
Why were you here? Do you remember what they told you about why you were here?
It wasn't what I was told, but what I saw.
Okay.
I saw, and I saw the purpose and the reason, for me being here in, this time. And there was quite a few reasons for it. I did have some karmic obligations with some family. I also agreed to help certain people. And a few other extremely personal reasons why.
Sure.
But yeah, I knew why I was here, so it was no question of me coming back. And I have no problem living life. Like I want to finish out this time.
Okay. Yeah, I think I deal with a lot of people that have been through tragedies, people that have lost children, et cetera. And so when we hear about realms where there's peace and love and comfort, and we think about all the chaos that we go through on Earth, people
Yeah,
sometimes struggle with like, why am I still here?
absolutely. Absolutely. You know, you'd be surprised, Brian, how much we choose during our life,
Hmm.
the situations we go through, um, and why we put ourselves through those situations. And believe it or not, there are reasons for them. Some of them are karmic, but not all of them are. Um, some of them are to help others with their karma. Um, there's so many reasons for why we go through certain things.
Hmm.
Um,
So how much of life is planned and how much of life is just random luck?
there's almost no randomness, believe it or not. And people don't like when I say that. But almost everything is planned. Um, you know, love, which is the foundation of everything, okay? Whether in this world or the spiritual world, it is perfect and it's harmonious. Okay. And that never changes. That never changes. However, in this world, in this realm, this 3D human existence, we don't always see it that way
Mm.
because of how we need to learn certain things. So certain things are presented to us in a way that we can understand. And they don't always seem perfect or sweet or loving, but that's just love fitting the experience to our understanding.
Hmm.
So, for instance, here's a good example of that. If I'm walking and the ground suddenly drops off, but I don't see that the ground is going to drop off. So, does love be its sweet, loving, beautiful self and say, "Hey, Vena, be careful because the ground's getting ready to drop off"? Or does love say, "Yo, watch out, be careful"? Which one is going to get my attention?
But the second one, yeah.
Exactly, because that's how I need to understand it.
Hmm.
So that's how love works. It doesn't always seem loving, um, but it always is. It's just in ways that we have to understand.
Hmm.
And some things we make hard for ourselves, depending on where we're at, mentally, emotionally, etc.
Right.
But so most of what we go through, believe it or not, is planned. And you'd be amazed that even the little experiences that happen to us are planned.
Yeah, that's the conclusion I'm starting to come to. And I know, again, people will say, well, well, first of all, I guess the first question is who's planning it? And the second question is, why would I plan it?
And it is you. It is you. It is me. We have a lot of say in what goes on in our lives.
Hmm.
Our soul does, put it that way. Um, when we're planning it, we have tremendous amount of say. Um, now, there is a thing called divine wisdom, and in other words, that divine wisdom or that love will kind of step in sometimes and tailor situations in ways that we really need it, and maybe that we didn't see fit to make ourselves experience, but that divine love, that divine wisdom will step in and tailor things for us in ways that we need to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, you just made a couple of really important distinctions there because, the thing about, I think you said our soul plans a lot for us. And so sometimes people say, well, why would I plan this? And the way I've always put people is like, I think you're planning it from your higher self. You're looking at it
yes,
from your the higher perspective that this is good for me, almost kind of like a parent would to a child. Sometimes the parent will tell a child to do this or do that. And the child's like, yeah, that's not really what I want to do. But the parents knows better and then tells the child out of love, this is the better thing for you.
absolutely, absolutely. And you have to remember something, Brian. When you are on the other side, you see this much, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But here you're only seeing this much. So when you're on that other side, when you're on the other side and looking at things through a 360-degree perspective, shall we say, you see the short and long term on everything. You see all sides.
Mm-hmm.
Here, you're only seeing it basically from one side, and that's kind of it. And so naturally, since we're not getting the bigger picture here, things seem unfair. It doesn't, bad luck. No, luck has very little to do with anything. The luck factor doesn't even play. It is, like I said, that divine wisdom that is seeing the whole bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about one of the things I was shown. My guide showed me a couple of my lives, and one of my lives, I was a very cruel teenager. And fortunately, I didn't live past being a teenager in one of these lives. And I was in one of the Nordic countries, like Norway or Sweden, one of those type countries. But anyway, I loved inflicting pain. And I did it to a lot of kids, my so-called friends. And it was very disheartening seeing that. But it was just something I just got such pleasure from doing. And in this life, I've had some very painful operations, and I have a lot of scars. Different scars, and a lot of them are permanent. Most of them are permanent, more so than your average person, shall we say. And let me tell you something, Brian, I earned those scars. I mean, the pain that went behind them, I earned them. And there was a connection. There's definitely a connection between that teen that I was, and this pain and these scars that I have in this life. Now, to your average onlooker, you're saying, my God, Vena, you've been terribly unlucky. My God, yeesh. But no, the bigger picture is that this was something that really needed to be flushed out.
Interesting. Okay. So when we talk about reincarnation, obviously you believe that reincarnation is true. But I've heard it also described that there is no time on the other side.
Right.
So how do past lives fit into that?
And they're not necessarily, we say past lives, but they're like concurrent.
Mm-hmm.
They are concurrent. And they're in the now. So although we're saying past, and I guess Earth time, it would have been a past life of mine in Earthwise. But when I was on the other side, seeing this, I experienced it almost as right next to the life that I was living.
Right.
Did you get that?
That's
Like,
my understanding. Yeah, that's
yeah.
my understanding. That's why I wanted to
Yes.
see if you shared that, because we
Yes.
do talk about past lives and people say, well, this is happening because this happened before.
Right.
My understanding, and this is from the Seth material, it kind of all overlaps.
It
So,
does.
and this life that we're living now also influences our other lives simultaneously.
It does. It does. And off that same exact point, but just slightly different, the soul, the soul can and does send out offshoots into other lives now. Like, while I'm here, I'm existing elsewhere.
Yeah.
And experiencing other stuff. And not just necessarily in a life, but there's all different types of worlds, Ryan. It's not just human type worlds. There's all different types of worlds, existences, and our soul is experiencing those. So yeah, it's all concurrent, all now.
Yeah, that's a hard thing for us to grasp as humans. And I keep coming across that concept that there is no time or even space on the other side, that it's all now and it's all here.
It is.
And our brains make up time while we're here.
We're linear thinkers.
Right.
We have to think linearly, if that's a word. But in reality, it is all at one.
Right.
It's all at one.
Right.
It's all a constant now. And when I went through the void, that was even impressed upon me even more. I saw the information I got while I went through the void, would literally blow your mind. But I experienced it all simultaneously and understood every bit of it during my time in the void. But when I came back from the void, it was like it was mind blowing, because I'm a linear thinker, and I had to take this, put it here, thinking wise, put this here,
right.
I even had to write down things because it was just all on top of each other. But I had no problem while I was in it.
Yeah, I think it was Einstein.
Spiritually.
I think it was Einstein that said it's like time is what keeps everything from happening all at once. So
my
understanding is in our human experience, we have this experience linearly. So we learned cause and effect. So we learned that this causes this, but on the other side, it's all jumbled together.
It is. I had an experience also once, and this is definitely in the book, but my guide stopped time, literally stopped time on a visit. And everything around me just froze during their visit. And, at the time, I was elated at seeing my guide again, and what had happened. But afterwards, I kind of understood, did they freeze time or just put me in the now? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So maybe they didn't really freeze time. They just took me out of my sense of time, and I was in the now.
Right. Right. Yeah, I'd like to. We're running short on time, but there's several questions I want to ask you, because you cover some really interesting topics in your book, and I want to just ask you real quickly if you could answer about connection with our pets, because people really have strong connections with our pets. What's that about?
Listen, real quick, you can edit all this, correct?
I can. Mm-hmm.
Is it easy for you to do?
I don't typically edit, but I can.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Because I did need to step away for about 3 minutes.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Do you mind that?
No. Let me just pause the recording.
Oh, and did you start it? All right, great.
There we go.
Okay,
I wanted to ask you about like our connection with our pets, because a lot of us, well, we have very, very special connection with our pets. And, you know, I know there's some debate, like, do animals have souls? Which I think is a silly debate, but some people do. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, they do. They definitely do. Their souls are different, you know, and what people don't understand is, you know, how can I say this? The human soul is not the only type of soul.
Mhm.
There's all different kind of souls. There is an animal kingdom, and there's animal souls. So I don't know if you do believe that they have souls, but I gotta tell you, they do. And they're not like ours,
Mhm.
but yes, they do have souls. And will we see our pets again? Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I've had 3 dogs, and I know they have souls. You just
Yeah.
if you've ever had a
Okay.
dog and you don't believe dogs have souls, I don't know what kind of a person that you are.
They're just different. That's all. They're just different types, but they do
Yeah,
have souls. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
think you have an answer to what autism is. So what is autism?
So I don't discuss autism, mainly because we don't have really time to go into it, and I never want to treat it casually.
Okay, yeah,
But I will just say this. Um, Autism, and I do cover it much, much more in the book, but
sure.
autism is, um, let's just say that autistic people look through a different lens than you and I.
Hmm.
And it's a different spiritual type of lens. Um, and at times it's a extremely beautiful type of lens.
Hmm.
Um, but just like, you know, these glasses, I see one way. If I take them off, I can hardly see. No, but that's not comparable to autism. But in other words, they're just looking through a different spiritual perspective.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. And I'll refer people to the books. I know you do cover it. You do cover it in the book.
Yeah, I
Um,
just don't talk about it casually or briefly,
right.
because out of respect.
Yeah, yeah, that's perfectly fine. That's a great
Yeah.
answer. What are your thoughts on God?
Um, there is no one God guy. It's God is all in all.
Hmm.
I call it the source because that's what I saw, the source of all. And to try to break it down and confine it to like one being, so to speak, we are all part of the source. We are all God. We are all a part of the fabric of love,
Yeah.
and love is all in all, you know? So that's my take.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've been around for a while, and everybody's trying to define God, and we grow up in Sunday school, and God's this old white guy in the sky, and then we go to the point where people say, well, there is no God, or then Star Wars, again, going back to fiction, you've got the Force, and we talk about source and stuff like that. And I'm coming to the conclusion there's no being called God. And I was reading something the other day and they said you keep looking for an object, and God is not an object. So God is everything. It's the source.
Everything.
It's the potential that
Everything.
we all come from. So I think that makes sense. And you say there's no politics or religion on the other side. And I was
Right.
looking at your Amazon page and I was looking through the reviews, and someone was like, "Who?" Everybody gave this book 5 stars. I don't give it 5 stars because there's a bunch of liberal progressive utopia stuff in here. And I thought that was really interesting. So how would you react to that comment?
Just like I'm reacting now. Yeah, when I first read that, I had to read it again because I was like, what the, this person, I don't know how you literally can say a near-death experience is a liberal experience. But fine, because that's how they interpreted it.
Mm-hmm.
When you're on the other side, and like I say, there's no politics on the other side in the spiritual realm because there's no opposing sides.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there literally there's no opposition to anything. Everything is harmonious, all one. Right. So there is no politics and there's no religion, and I guess is the liberal whatever that they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think that you can confine the realm of love, spirituality, harmony, perfection, peace, purity, if you think you can confine that into one religion, no, it just can't be done. When you're talking about all in all. So no, there's, but I have major respect for religions because I saw they're necessary. And I put that in the book. And so for that person to actually, say all that stuff and then still read the chapter on religion where I give major props to religion, because a lot of people need religion and it helps them. Yeah. It helps a lot of people. Sure. I can't ascribe to any, just because of what I saw, but a lot of people do, and it has helped them tremendously, made them better people. Sure. So yeah, that was I don't know.
I thought it was funny too. I thought it was really interesting. But as you were talking, it reminded me of the song by John Lennon, the song "Imagine," which, imagine there's no heaven, imagine there's no religion, imagine, there's no, all the things that divide us here. And people misinterpret that song because John Lennon was an atheist because he said there's no heaven. And what do you mean there's no religion? And he's like, these are things that divide us here. And you and I we started off talking about race earlier on.
Yes.
And there's two different levels. On the other side, there's no race. On this side, we have divided by race. And so
right.
I've accepted that I am perceived as a Black person. I do have racial pride. And I think our people have been through a lot, which has made us resilient people, strong people. And I'm proud of that, while I'm here, because that's part of being a human being on this planet, at this time. But ultimately, that's not who any of us are.
Right. Absolutely. And that person who is very bigoted here will typically choose to come back as a race that they're not crazy about now. They'll so I mean, you got to be careful of your hatred because if you hate on the LGBTQ, you might find yourself back as a person who loves the same sex. So I mean, and that's another thing. I do have a section in the book on LGBTQ, and I know that was another criticism that person wrote. About the liberal agenda, because I can't. I'm not going to lie, and there is none of that hatred or division over there. There isn't. So yes, it's here, but it's not over there, and that's not what I saw. So if you want to say that's a liberal agenda, fine, but
Well, it's interesting once you start to believe in reincarnation, and there's a song by Logic, the rapper. I don't know if you've ever heard this, and he does a little piece with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and this guy is killed, and he's talking to God, and he's going through, his life and everything. And he says, well, I'm going to send you back, and you're going to be, you're going to be this big shot. You're going to have all this land and blah, blah, blah. And there's a black guy. And he goes, and you're going to own slaves. He goes, what? I'm going to own, it's like, no, I can't do that. So it's a comical play on this idea that, once you really see that we all can reincarnate as anything, then you have to be very careful about what you do. And you did mention karma. I do want to come back to that maybe as we wrap up, because what's your perception of karma? You said you might find yourself back as an LGBTQ person. Does that mean someone's going to send you back as as like a punishment, or how does that work?
No, you basically, you and your guide will basically kind of do your life itinerary, and you'll decide that. But here's the thing with karma. Karma is not necessarily bad or good. It's just that you have to understand the universe, love, whatever you want to call it, God, the source, whatever. There's perfection, okay? And so when everything, is perfect balance, okay? So when we kind of have an imbalance in an area, you're going to have to balance that out. And so, say, for instance, I just can't stand, I don't know, whoever or whatever. And I have an unhealthy imbalance towards a certain group of people. Okay. You have to balance that out. So whether you come back as one of them or have a child that's one of them, okay, however you choose to manifest it, you'll do that in order to balance out that imbalance.
Right.
Okay, so that is basically karma. So it's not necessarily good or bad. It's just everything will balance eventually. Yeah. Our soul is perfect balance. Perfect. And so in all its experiences and all its existences, it will seek to keep that balance, however it does it, you know? So that's basically what karma is, balance.
Yes. So Vena, I do appreciate you being so generous with your time today and doing this. It's been great getting to know you. Can people reach out to you? I know you have a YouTube channel. Can people reach out to you there?
Not on YouTube, but I do have email. My NDE from A to Z at gmail.com.
Okay.
I don't prefer that they use Messenger on Facebook. It's just too much to keep track of.
Sure.
Email is much better. And listen, I thoroughly enjoyed meeting with you, and not only that, but your grasp on things is it's inspiring to me. Honestly, it's probably one of the better interviews I've had.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Your grasp on things and your questions, and definitely, for sure. And I've done a few, so.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that very much. I want to remind people of the name of the book. It's My Near-Death Experience from A to Z. It's by Vena R. It's Venia. The I is silent. From Vena R. You can get it on Amazon. And we just, I think, touched the surface today. So I encourage people to go out and get the book. And also, Vena has a lot of other interviews on her YouTube channel.
Yes, questions and answers. And and I definitely appreciate it. And I thank you. I thank you for some very thought-inspiring questions.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Hopefully I'll have you back one day. And but for now, enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. You too. Thank you.
Bye. Hi there. I hope you enjoyed this latest episode of the podcast, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. What questions came up for you? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? I invite you to visit us at grieftogrowth.circle.so. That's grief2growth.circle.so to continue the conversation with me and with other listeners. It's a space to sound off, to share reactions, and to go deeper into the topics from the show. I look forward to chatting more, and I hope to see you there.